Afternoon, everybody. My name is Brad Uhlig, and I'm here with my business partner, Jay Peterson, and our guest speaker, Fleming Schutrumpf today. We're with Westpeak Properties. Westpeak Properties is a full-service brokerage firm. We specialize in investment properties ranging anywhere from a single-family home to larger apartment buildings. We help you find it, analyze it, buy it, manage it, flip it, etc. And our goal here is to help investors create cash flow and build wealth through investing in real estate. We've been doing this for about 14 years now as a team. We have experience in over hundreds of transactions closed. We have an extensive network of investors. I think it's over 5,000 people now that are investors in and around the state of Colorado. So it's always a good idea to reach out to us if you have a property that you're looking to buy or sell. About 25% of our transactions every year are transacted off market, where we plug a buyer in with a seller, etc. We don't do property management ourselves, but we do have some property management partners that we're happy to refer people to. So if you have that need, feel free to reach out to us. If you ever need anything like resources to rehab a unit, plumbers, electricians, painters, etc. We're happy to refer any of those types of people out to help our investors do what they need to do to make money on their properties, get them ready to rent, etc. We host these webinars from time to time, and so we've got a few past ones posted on our website. You can go to westpeakproperties.com and find the information and recordings on Section 8 rentals, short-term rentals, property management practices, 1031 exchanges, cost segregation, using Delaware statutory trusts. This one will also go up on there once we have this recording. We will also send this recording out to everybody that registered for the webinar today. And you can look to see that come out probably sometime tomorrow morning. So today we're going to be talking about Denver rental property inspection requirements. Our guest speaker is Fleming Schutrumpf. And Fleming, as we know him, is somebody that we've done business with before. We've known him for a while now. He is not only a property inspector for the city of Denver, but he is also an investor himself. He owns, I think he said, over 20 current properties. He has flipped over 100 or rehabbed over 100 of them. He's got extensive experience managing properties, etc. So we're very lucky to have Fleming here because he is one of us, as well as being a property inspector. And so he's going to be able to give us a unique perspective in that regard. So at this point, I will turn things over to Fleming and let him run with it from here.
Thank you, Brad. Really appreciate it. Glad to be here. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, you're all good.
Beautiful. Yeah. I'm here to talk to you about the Denver rental licensing program, which has been a big topic of discussion for all of us. First of all, I wanted to share with you my qualifications. You may have heard in the news that there was a big shortage of inspectors for the 146,000 inspections that Denver was looking at having to complete, possibly by the end of this year, actually. And one of the reasons is that the framers of this law required that every rental inspector have essentially the same criteria, qualifications, as the chief building official for the city of Denver. So I'm not only a licensed framing inspector, but also a licensed electrical inspector, a licensed plumbing inspector, and a licensed HVAC inspector. And it seemed a little overkill for what we're doing for a safety inspection, but those are the rules, and I'm one of the few that meets them. I'm also an InterNACHI certified home inspector, a licensed broker. I've been investing, bought my first property in '94. And also wrote 3 books on real estate, so I geek out on real estate a little bit. But to tell you about what's needed for the licensing program is you need an inspection before you can apply for your city rental license. This is only for the city and county of Denver. So if you own properties in Jeffco, Adams, Arapahoe, whatever, you're not under these guidelines. This is just for Denver. It requires that about 10% of the units are inspected. And the reason I say about is there's some rounding rules. If you have a 14-unit building, you need 1 unit inspected. If you had a 15-unit building, then the rounding carries you up to having 2 inspections. However, regardless, if you have any units below grade, they need to be inspected that they're free of leaks, that there's no flooding. And once you have my inspection report, or whichever inspector you hire, you have to apply for the rental license. And it's interesting because I think we as landlords see ourselves as providing a beneficial service to tenants, providing a home, but we're following the same workflow as a marijuana dispensary applicant, or a strip club, or a tobacco retailer, or a liquor store would have to follow. And so it feels a little like we're put into a category that I don't think landlords are part of. We actually provide benefits to society. The license lasts for 4 years, so you only need an inspection every 4 years. And a big thing about this is that when you apply for your license, let's say you're a smart landlord and you own your property in an LLC or a trust, you must disclose who's behind the LLC or behind the trust, and actually upload ID documents for every single owner, which is beyond the safety that was the original goal that the proponents of this program advertised. And they collect a bunch of other data that actually feels less invasive, like whether you have gas stoves or electric stoves. And I think there are some significant benefits. The big one I'm noticing, including in my own units, is it's embarrassing how shoddy some wiring is. I'm finding lots of open ground where you have a 3-prong outlet. The bottom prong doesn't hook up to anything. Or the wires are just flopped. They didn't know that the white wire actually goes on the correct side, not the wrong side. The other thing about wiring is the GFI outlet in the bathroom, the one with the test reset buttons. If somebody drops their hair dryer in a sink full of water and grabbed it, the GFI outlet would shut off power. With a normal outlet, the person grabbing the sink might have their hair stand up on end or worse. The other thing I'm finding, lots of missing smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarm. The key thing to pass, you have to have a smoke alarm in every single sleeping room.
Really?
Yeah. So the old rule used to be just in the hallway, and then the bedrooms didn't have them. The new rule is if somebody were smoking in bed with the door closed and fell asleep, that they would have a smoke alarm in that room to wake them up before bad things happened. And then there's, of course, the state law that every dwelling, whether or not there's any fuel burning appliances, needs a carbon monoxide alarm. So we're enforcing that. Finally, every dwelling must have a fire extinguisher. If it's a multifamily, you can have a shared fire extinguisher within 75 feet of each unit. Bigger things are, and I'll talk more about this, but the fire rating for furnace rooms for any basement apartments, that's kind of expensive. And then the egress windows, which luckily got repealed, but I used to live and own in Capitol Hill, and there's a lot of basement apartments that don't have egress windows, and where the Historical Society would not necessarily approve egress windows, but where the city was requiring those. And at today's cost of approximately $5,000 per egress window, that was a big deal for the early adopters like myself, who tried to be compliant and spent a lot of money on it. And so ultimately, go ahead.
So
Did you have?
So I was going to say, just real quick on the fire extinguisher, Fleming, you and I were talking about this before this started. Just so everybody knows, you don't have to get the big, massive ones that commercial properties have, because if you have a multi-unit dwelling, that's going to be very expensive. You can get the cheaper ones. You mentioned the Costco or Home Depot has the ones at $20 a piece. So I mean, I have a triplex, and so I'm going to be getting the smaller ones for each unit that you had said.
Correct. According to the program rules, any fire extinguisher is acceptable if you have one in each unit. If you're going to share them across units, it still has to be the massive one.
Yeah, got it.
Great question. Thank you. There's a number of costs and impacts, and the big one is the cost of an inspection. I charge $185 for a single inspection. Other companies charge around $200 a unit. If you have a larger multifamily, I think pretty much everybody gives discounts, as I do. And then once you have that inspection paid for, you have the 4-year license. It's about $125 for a small multifamily. It's more, I think that peaks at $500 for the larger multifamilies. And if you own single family houses, right now it's $75. I think it'll be $100 starting in 2023. The big thing that a lot of people are aggrieved at is that it is piercing the corporate veil of disclosing who's behind the trust. And so before, a lawyer would have to get a subpoena to get somebody to disclose who owns a apartment building if it was held in a way that they couldn't see it already. Now it's just a simple open records request to the city of Denver. So our kind of asset protection strategies have been defeated by this program. Definitely there's an inspection disruption to tenants as well to landlords. So if I've inspected units when the tenant was doing a really important job interview, I did not unplug his Wi-Fi as part of testing the outlets. But the other thing that I'm finding, and it's really interesting because there's a lot of landlords who've hired somebody who got on the city inspector registry, but who actually lacked the requirements. So the person purchased an inspection report, submitted to the city, and then the city says, oh, your inspector doesn't meet the criteria. And so the person had to hire somebody else like myself. And the city refuses to centralize anything about inspectors. They say that's outside the purview of this program. And I think that's challenging for the public. And some of our licenses don't have an expiration date. And again, the city could just keep a record of this, but that they won't. Instead, every owner has to learn the intricacies of my license and what my expiration dates are, and submit those to the city correctly. And so there's some inefficiencies in the process here. And then if I own 20 some units in Denver, it took me a solid 2 weeks to get ready for the inspections I hired another inspector for. So it's a significant deal for us as landlords to get ready for these.
Sure. Hey,
But
Jay, we got a couple of questions. I don't know if we want to try to attack those now.
Sure.
Yeah.
On. Well, the first one here is relating to the idea. Somebody who's got set up a little bit more of a complex entity here, where they're saying the property is owned in a land trust and the beneficiary is a single member LLC, whose member is single member is a Wyoming LLC owned by husband and wife. What identities need to be shown to Denver? Do you know that, Fleming?
I do not know that, but what I do know is that they require driver's license or passport images to be uploaded for the rental license. And I'm thinking they won't stop at the Wyoming LLC. They'll want to see who the person is behind that, is my guess, but I don't know that for sure.
You're going to want the husband and the wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another one here, and I think this relates to next year because I saw it on the Denver website. It says, the question is, for single family homes, does each home need to be inspected?
Correct. Yes. So the deadline is the end of next year, but
Next year,
yeah. And I think, you guys sell primarily multifamily real estate, and that is one of the advantages of a multifamily real estate is that you don't have 100% inspection rate.
Right.
Well, what is the rate? The rate is what, 10% of the units, or what is the rate?
That's correct, 10%.
Okay.
Somebody asked if I can call you to inspect my own properties, which the answer to that is yes. So your contact information will be here at the end.
Yes.
Somebody else asked, do we need this inspection for our own Section 8 properties?
Yes, I've had several people try to get a waiver based on the fact that they had a Section 8 inspection last month, and there is we still have to do our own inspection. And I do find that the things the rental licensing program has us inspect for are different, and that I still find wiring non-compliances or smoke alarm non-compliances that Section 8 doesn't catch. So there's a partial benefit to that, that Section 8 isn't very rigorous, but they're overly rigorous on other things. So you just get another inspection.
Got it. Let's see. John says, I'm confused if I need an inspection. I have 2 properties in Denver in the same subdivision. They have separate addresses as their individual townhomes.
That would be a question to actually email the city about. I know if it's a condo building, and in the same condo building, if you own 2 condos, I would only have to inspect 1. But if they're separate, essentially attached single family, but in the same subdivision, my guess is the city would tell you to get 2 inspections, but I can't say that for sure. It's worth trying to see if you could save the cost of 1 inspection.
Okay. Just a couple more here. Do you think it's possible to show the ID of the registered agent of the LLC versus the actual owner?
It's worth a try.
Okay. Sophia asks, my question relates to newer properties. I heard that newer properties could bypass inspection requirements. Do you know what the date of the Colorado needs to be for the waiver? I've said several ground up new townhome rentals that were co-ed 2018 and 19.
The date of the CO being the certificate of occupancy.
Of occupancy, yeah, CO, right.
So if it's 2018, you would require inspection. So they're waiving inspection on properties less than 4 years old because they know it'll get re-inspected in 4 years. But the question is, would they make you inspect it in 2023 or 2024, or let you slide a whole license cycle? But definitely if it's 2018 or it's already 4 years old, then you would require an inspection.
Yeah, okay. A couple more real quick. Do the inspections go with the property or with each owner?
With the owner. So once, if a property sells, or even if for asset protection, you quit deeded it to your land trust or whatever, you would have to get a new inspection and get a new license.
Really? Even if you just change the entity after you buy it?
That's correct. Yeah, I inspected a large apartment complex and they paid me like $3,000 for doing a lot of units inspected. And they're doing a re-syndication where some of the investors step out and new ones step in. And so that basically the LLC is like something 2 and it becomes something 3. And they're required to get a new inspection and a new license.
Wow.
Yeah, that's surprising. Another question here from Phil. Hi, Phil. I know Phil, he's a neighbor of mine. I've had some water in my basement apartment, but I've taken steps, and this is at a investment property that he has, but I've taken steps to prevent it from happening again. Is this a problem?
I'm a landlord too, so as an inspector, I have a limited amount of professional discretion. I think if there's no active flooding and no active signs of badly impaired wall surface, like you have mold or flaking wall covering, that's okay. But if there were active signs of flooding, that would be different. And there's a slide later about this. I talk about, I just paid $2,000 for stormwater fees. And there are neighborhoods in Denver where Denver actually doesn't really have a stormwater mitigation plan or the infrastructure for it. And it floods every time there's a heavier rain. And this program makes us culpable for deficiencies in Denver's infrastructure. And that is a problem that hasn't been addressed by the city.
Okay. Well, it's a few more, but let's just continue on. We can go back to the quick Q&A a little bit later.
Great. Yeah, I like these questions. Great
Yeah.
questions, everybody. Thank you.
Good.
So here, I want to help people pass. So I kind of listed the most common non-conformances. And so each and every bedroom needs a smoke alarm. That was a new rule made in 2016, but seemingly nobody got the memo. I've inspected, 400 unit apartment complexes where I walked through 45 units. Not one of them in their bedroom had a smoke alarm, and that's a lot of rework. Not having a carbon monoxide alarm, not having the GFI, not having the fire extinguisher. But here's the big ones, and this really speaks to an investment strategy for you guys as well. If you're looking at buying or selling a property that has a basement apartment, the rules get a lot stricter, and they get a lot stricter than a comparable house that has the same layout downstairs. But if you have a basement apartment or anything that's where the ground of the flooring of the apartment is below the outside grade, you must have a 1 hour wall and door around your utility room. And in that, they actually copied commercial code, not realizing that a duplex, triplex is not built to commercial code. But now with this program, these smaller residential properties are held to a commercial standard, which again is problematic. Not having the 1 hour fire door and just one door, like just the door, if you bought it, if you special ordered at Home Depot, a 1 hour fire rating, $600.
Wow.
So just so you know that. And then the egress windows are still required if your property was built or converted to a basement apartment after 1990. And so, yeah, talked about the target aimed at below grade units. In Cole, Whittier, and in Elyria, since they built the new highway, there's flooding that isn't being addressed by the city's infrastructure. So I spent about $10,000 on egress windows just before the election. The egress window requirement was stricken from the rules. And so that teaches me something about being an early adopter can sometimes be harmful. I don't think that's the lesson that the city wanted to teach all of us, but that is something that's worth knowing. Talked about the commercial 1 hour fire doors. But here's another problem with the program. So I don't know if you, Jay, or Brad have units where you've had a tenant for 12 years or longer, and they have 4 or 5 cats, and they just keep bringing in more possessions, and maybe don't shovel out all the cat litter. There are units, including some of mine, where if that unit were inspected, it would be declared uninhabitable. But there's no program for helping those people get help and where to put them. So with an uninhabitable unit, I would have to get rid of that tenant without giving them anywhere to go. And I think if this program is meant to help people, it fails to address that aspect. And then there's a lot of unclear city rules. So the rules specifically say 1 hour fire rating. There was a webinar for us inspectors where one of the building inspectors said, no, a 20-minute fire door is okay. But the city has yet to change their language. And one of the bigger inspection firms said, well, their lawyer has given them the ruling that until the writing is changed, they cannot inspect to the lesser standards. So the city has to update their rules to match their statements before the inspections get to be more generous in their leeway. And I think the big one is, as landlords, when a renter smashes a hole in your wall and then I inspect your unit, I'm required to write you up for holes in the walls. But it feels a little bit like writing CDOT a ticket because somebody is driving on their CDOT roads with an unsafe vehicle. I've seen a lot of cases where tenants, a lot of smoke alarms fake alarm in the middle of the night. Tenants will just take that smoke alarm and throw it out the window in the middle of the night. And then I've inspected houses where there's 6 smoke alarms missing, and the hardwired ones cost about $30 a piece. So the landlord again has to spend $180 replacing them. And there's no mechanism with the state for having the renters kind of co-accountable for those costs.
Well, and oftentimes renters just allow the D battery to go bad and then it just beeps all the time. And I come across that with some of my Section 8 rentals. Hence, that's why we now put in the 10-year life battery or 10-year life smoke alarms. So to avoid that issue.
Which with those, I've seen about a 13-month mean time to failure for some of them. So yeah, 10 years isn't what it used to be.
Okay. Right.
The penalties. So Jay asked a question earlier. What happens to a landlord for a multifamily landlord who doesn't get their inspection done by end of the year? And as far as I know, when I confirmed this last week doing the slide deck, there are no penalties yet. They're going to define those in 2024. So right now, this is kind of to just shepherd people towards compliance. But once they do define them, the model city for this whole program is Boulder. Boulder has $1,000 a day penalty for a landlord being in violation of these kind of rules.
Wow.
And I was looking in, I think it's Pittsburgh. You cannot win an eviction if you don't have a valid rental license. So that's one more way to kind of ensure compliance. And then on Airbnb, you cannot advertise your Airbnb rental if it doesn't have a Denver short-term license. So there could be a thing that Zillow and other advertisers don't allow you to rent, to list vacancies if you don't have a rental license. That's not current, but that could become that way. We don't know yet what the compliance levels are. So the last I saw from the city, they think a lot less than required have gotten their licenses so far. And I think the biggest challenge with this program, that if it's supposed to create safer housing for tenants, they have not changed the existing process, which is that tenants, if they have a problem, they complain to the city and the Department of Health and Human Safety inspects it. So that part hasn't changed with this. So we created a program where the crux of the program is an existing process. So as a buyer, as an owner or investor, some things to think about as you look at new investments in Denver is below grade units are regulated much more strictly. And so there's the big thing about the egress window requirement going away just prior to the election. In Boulder, egress windows are a big deal, and there is no grace for landlords who don't have them. So the question is, will that come back? Will people go back to having to spend $5,000 or $20,000 or $50,000 getting all their below grade units egress compliant? And then if you look at some of the Cap Hill properties or the one you guys sold for me, the 5-unit, where the bedroom window is right up against a sidewalk and you don't have 36 inches from the wall of the house to the outside of the egress window well to do that. And so there's other regulatory costs. If you have a basement apartment that has a furnace in it, especially if the furnace is accessible from the bedroom, then you have to do some serious fireproofing. And then if you look at buying an apartment building with below grade units or a below grade condo, you also have lower rent and higher turnover to add to these kind of regulatory costs. And then we talked about this earlier. There may be a bigger benefit to having multifamily to single family, even on a duplex. If you have, if you get lucky, the random selection could be the better unit rather than on a single family house where every single family house has to be inspected. Yeah, here's the link. And I think the shorter link at the bottom is the easier one if people want to write that down. But yeah, I'm basically ready to take more questions from you guys.
Yeah, we got plenty.
And we do. Okay. Sandy asks, regarding the egress window, is there any kind of timeline that it's that it gets grandfathered in to not have an egress or not? In other words, she says she's got a 1963 home. Is that required?
On a single family home, the egress window was not required. It was just being required on basement apartments and multifamily. So that was one of those where I felt like there was an unfair target. However, in Boulder, in a single family home where you had below grade bedrooms, you would have to have egress windows. So, and I want to tell you that it seems like every other month, the rules get updated, in some cases significantly. So it's an evolving thing, and we don't know what next month's update will bring.
Okay. Another one, do you know what methods Denver will use to determine if a single family home property is rented?
I do not know that. So Boulder is, and Boulder is a college town. So if you have neighbors that have parties till 2 a.m. every Friday and Saturday, there's a good chance that they're college kids, which are most likely renters. And so in Boulder, you would search that address on the city's website to see if they have a rental license. If they don't have one and you suspect they're renters, you would file a complaint with the city, and they would send in a city inspector to see if there's a violation, and then fine the landlord $1,000 a day for non-compliance. Denver hasn't defined that whole process, but if they were to copy Boulder, it could look something like that.
Well, and they can obviously check public record to see if the owner lives at that property or not, and then send out, letters or information inquiring to the owner, I would imagine.
That would be easy because I've bought those kind of lists to send postcards, and the city definitely has access to that.
Steve asks regarding a basement unit, can you confirm that the unit is separately rented, is a separate rented dwelling unit? A basement in a single family home rented as a whole home would not be a basement unit, correct?
That is correct. And that is a big distinction. Yeah.
Yeah. So it applies to an egress and furnace room fire rating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the guidebook specifically says for basement apartments only, so it excludes single family homes. But we're going into 2023 where the single family homes must be licensed. So I could see the city updating the rules to now target single family homes more explicitly. Yeah. And it's too late to kind of get too many single family homes inspected, but before they were offering a early licensing discount to single family properties licensed in 2022.
Well, and this, Amy asks, she said, do the inspections need to be complete by the year 2023? So we talked about that a little bit earlier. The multifamily, our requirement is this year for 2022. Single family kicks in next year, 2023, right? Okay.
Right.
But wasn't there some sort of like I don't want to, a grace period or something like that you mentioned, Fleming?
Yeah. So, and I'm speculating that there's a lot of multifamilies that aren't going to quite get their inspections and licensing done this year, and that if that spills over into next year, I don't think the city will jump all over those owners with fines. If they do it early in the year, I don't know how that will unroll them.
I gotcha. Okay.
But as of right now, there are no fines if it spills over.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's on the top of everyone's minds here as we're in the month of December.
I know it's and yeah, there's Christmas holidays coming up, and it's getting
right. Annette asks, is a combo / smoke CO2 alarm, carbon monoxide alarm in each bedroom meet the requirement? Which I'm assuming yes.
It does. It's a great way to do it. It's slightly more expensive, but I
right.
highly encourage that. That's great.
Right. Roman asks, what is a basement unit? A 2-story house with 1 bedroom in the basement? Is that a basement unit?
Yeah, we just talked about that one.
Yeah. Does the property need to be located in both the city and county of Denver? One of our properties is in Denver County, in Denver City, but Adams County.
Adams County has a different program, but this program does not apply there.
Okay. Norm says the home has a crawl space, furnace is in the crawl space. Is there instructions on the access door?
If there are instructions on the access door to the laundry room, is it in a hall between the house and garage?
No, that's fine. The main, this is a safety thing. So the furnace being outside of the like kind of bedroom airspace is really important. How to get to the furnace is not something that we're required to inspect for.
Okay. Are there various problems with the program, such as revisions needed for clarification or make reasonable? Are they being dealt with by the city? Are they gradual? Are they quick? You may not know that.
No, I have a partial answer. If the city listens to it, they may not like it. I find that for me and other inspectors I've talked to, that when we have specific questions, it takes significantly longer than helpful to get those questions answered.
Okay. Matthew asks, I have a property in a building with a finalized CO certificate of occupancy October 2019. And I was going to wait until the next cycle to inspect, but the city I said I need to provide a qualifying agency inspection. The on-site management company is requesting this from the developer, but they have not had anyone make this request, so they're not aware of the document. Do you have any insider tips on this issue?
I mean, I hear just lots of brain damage. I think just spend $185 and get an inspection and just get it done with.
Sure. Let's see. Ralph asks, I have furnaces in the crawl space below each unit. The entrance to the crawl space entrance is on the exterior of the building. What are the fire ratings of the hardwood floors?
They're looking at wall fire ratings, so ceiling and floor fire ratings are not addressed in the guidebook that I use for inspection.
Okay.
So you're exempt there.
John asked about the recording. Is a recording of this talk going to be available? Yes, it will, John. We're going to be putting this recording out tomorrow, so we'll be sending out a link to everyone. And Eric asks, how does the city know which properties are rentals, which are not, which we addressed above, but do you know of anything that they're doing to scan each individual property, Fleming, for on-site, or whether owners live there or not?
How are they policing this, right? That's the
Yeah.
question, basically.
This is a brilliant question, because I've thought about this, because one thing I haven't talked about is the whole licensing application process. When I inspected all my units, and then I applied for my first 4 licenses as a trial, literally I felt like in high school where I had this teacher who hated me and would not give me an A regardless of what I turned in. That's how the city was. Like I would fill it out to the best of my ability, submit it, and they would reject it. And then I would fix what they told me to fix, and they would reject it for something else or that. And I went through like 16 rejections on those 4. And then I gave up. And then my applications aged out. So I was worried I had to pay another $500 application fee. And then they undeleted them. And then finally I had to make an in-person appointment to go through it with the city for them to teach me some minor things and get those first 4 licenses approved. And then my other 16 or 18 applications, they took about 30 minutes each. So it got a lot better. And part of that was also like the aging out, the process got fixed and got made better. But many of you will find when you apply for your license, it's not an easy process. It's a challenging workflow. And I'm surprised, amazed actually how many 70 and 80-year-old landlords we have who are not computer savvy. And this process is not built to be in any way conducive to their well-being and their ability to provide good housing to their tenants. So there's challenges there that haven't been resolved yet. I think I got off track with the question.
Well, yeah, we really don't know how they are knowing which ones are rented or not, right? I mean, I
so
guess they could peruse the Zillows of the world and see who's offering a place for rent, and then check the database to see if they have a license. I mean, there's things that they could be doing. We just don't know what they are doing, right?
Thank you, Brad. So what I learned when I went to the city, they have hired some 20 or maybe even 30 people for this program. And so we know this year is busy with multifamily, next year is busy with single family, and then in 2024, there'll be 30 people with nothing to do. And so then the question is, what will they do to fill their time? And it could be what was suggested in the question of scanning houses to see who is an unlicensed rental. But that's conjecture. Maybe they have some other important things to do.
Okay, we have a few more here. Sandy asks, could you do a pre-inspection so we can get the unit prepared for the real inspection? Or it'd be worth her just giving you a call to talk it over first.
I really see myself, I'm not a dick with a clipboard. I really want to be like a compliance facilitator. I'm a landlord too. So I'm happy to provide the coaching so that any owner is ready to pass the inspection. And then if there's simple things, smoke alarms, fire extinguishers, it's not that hard to do a reinspection. It's not, I wouldn't overdo it.
Well, I guess I'll kind of parlay that question, because with our Section 8 inspections, oftentimes, and well, it hasn't happened very often, but the few times that I have not passed an inspection, they'll say, if you correct it and you send me a video or a picture, then they don't have to come back out. Is that how you would work too?
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's helpful. Roman asks, where can I find the guidebook? Is that on the link you have here? Or
Exactly. It's on that same page. Yeah.
Okay. Hannah asks, if a single family is converted to include a basement unit, but the owner lives in the basement and rents out the top, do they need to have egress windows in the basement?
No, this is specifically for tenant safety. It is not for owner safety. So I would not be inspecting the basement unit if it's an owner occupied unit.
Good question. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you would only have a license for the upstairs. So if you ever decided to move above ground and switch through that would become possibly requiring a new inspection and a new license. I don't know the intricacies of that.
Karen asks, when a property management company takes on a new property, does the management company need to obtain proof of rental license?
Good question, because as property managers, we would need to be licensed brokers, and we have somebody looking over our shoulder there.
Right.
Probably any property management agency worth its salt wants to be in full compliance. And that's what I've been seeing is I've been called by the property management companies the most.
Yeah.
Roman asks, a duplex home is a multi-unit dwelling. It should be inspected by end of 22. Yeah, that is correct, Roman, for this year for multi-units. This person asks,
so just to clarify that, Jay, so a duplex qualifies as a multi-unit dwelling. It's not,
Correct.
I mean, it's going to be listed in the county record as a single family, anything 2 to 4 units, right? Or 1 to 4 units, but for the purposes of this inspection, I guess this is for you, Fleming, is a duplex considered a multifamily or a single family? Does that requirement need to be done now or next year? I guess is the question.
Now, so only single families, like single family is literally a house or an attached row home, like attached single family or detached single family. But anything with more than 1 unit is considered multifamily for this program.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not the financing rules where 1 to 4 gets better financing than 5 and up. It's 1 unit or it's 2 units up is multifamily.
Okay.
I think you addressed this earlier, but this person asks, we own 20 single family homes in Denver. The 10% rule doesn't apply on each, and each property will need to be inspected.
That's correct.
Yeah. Jeremy asks, how do property managers engage with completing inspections and licensing?
I've had property management firms call me, work out a discount for getting their whole portfolio inspected and then just getting those knocked out.
Okay. what are the requirements, if for any, for a multi-unit furnace room that opens directly to living space, but not sleeping space?
The same 1 hour fire rating,
Fire rating. Yeah.
which would require drywall on the inside of the furnace room walls, as well as the fire rated door and this, the fire rated door.
And as I remember, the drywall has to be, isn't it 5/8 inch thick or thicker?
Correct. Yeah. The fire resistant drywall.
And with my triplex, I guess they converted a regular door to a fire rated door by putting a piece of metal over that side. Is that enough would that work?
This gets into one of the gray areas. The only way to test the fire rating of the door is to like destructively test it, and that's not what my purview. So our job is to kind of ascertain to the best of our ability if that would qualify as a fire rated door. And if it's a solid core door behind that metal, it probably would qualify. And if it was a hollow core door, then it probably wouldn't.
Well, I've had the Denver Fire Department inspect my triplex every year, and they had me put the 5/8 inch thick drywall all in that room, but they're fine with my regular door with that metal sheet on the outside, and it is probably a solid core door, like you said. So,
I think I'm fine with that. Yeah, I go with being a reasonable person.
This is interesting. If a basement unit has its own separate entry, do you need an egress window? For this?
So this screwed me up on my below grade units, because before August 20th, you needed just dual egress. And then on August 20th, they changed the rule that every bedroom needed egress in the bedroom. And so I had a 1-bedroom basement apartment where the egress window was in the kitchen. And I had my inspection on August 21st, and the inspector is like, nope, you got to spend another $5,000 putting a second egress window into the bedroom. So then I was triple egress. But those are the kind of things we deal with as landlords. And so just having a secondary exit, if that egress requirement came back, is not adequate. It has to be egress exit from the bedroom.
Barbara said, I got a postcard from the city for each of my single family units. So the city has already gone through the list to discover which houses are rental. So thanks for sharing that, Barbara.
Oh, thank you. That's a really great insight.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Norm says the city does look at Zillow, Airbnb, et cetera. So that's interesting. Steve says regarding handrails on stairs, must install or previously installed?
Not
previously installed.
We are required to check safety of egress, so having a handrail is a great idea.
Yeah.
And it's just a liability thing. I think some of it, like the egress thing, like cost me a lot of money and created some heartburn in me. I think a lot of these requirements help us as landlords sleep better at night. Like there is nothing wrong with spending money on the carbon monoxide and smoke alarms or the handrail, because if you had a tenant slip and fall on the stairway and they could prove that you didn't have a handrail, like that could be a big hit, and it's just easier to not have it. So at some level, these inspections help you sleep better. And at some level, you have to do a bunch of work all at once, which, is a hurdle to get over.
Fleming, is there a requirement to have a handrail return? That is like to where it butts up against the wall.
So I'd have to pull out the checklist. That is a requirement. There's room for some amount of interpretation on what is a safe handrail, but definitely if you're installing a new handrail, just have it returned. It's not that hard, and it's worth it.
Okay.
Yeah. The last question really just relates mainly to what caused this kind of crazy bill to come up. Have there been fatalities or have been any issues or have they been talking about this for years and finally implemented it, or Do you know
You know,
what?
secondhand, I've heard that there was one city council person who had a really challenging landlord and wanted to address those issues. I don't know if that's factual or not.
Oh, a couple more here. We have a single family home, limited space, and have sliding closet door covering maintenance closet because it can't swing out or in. Would we need to upgrade the doors in this situation?
So there's sliding closet doors, is that correct?
Yeah, sliding closet doors covering the maintenance closet. Because it can't swing her out,
Gonna assume there's a furnace in there,
right?
Mhm.
water heater.
What I've seen in countries like England and Ireland, where there's lots of tight spaces, is they'll cut the door in half and put piano hinge. And so instead of being a 3-foot wide door, it's a 1.5 foot wide door, but it can still be solid core. It can still have that fire rating. And so I've seen creative ways to solve that problem, but sliding doors are inherently a problem because they have a lot of airspace and room for, if there was a fire in the furnace closet, that it does not provide an adequate safety seal.
So what would you suggest this guy do to pass this inspection for that reason?
I would change, and the other thing about sliding doors, they're going to be hollow core because a heavy door on those tracks doesn't work.
Right.
Is to replace, take off that top sliding track, get 2 doors, hinge them on either side of the door jamb. That's the right way to do it.
Okay. Another one asks, do you see other metro counties following this process? Is there any talk or discussion on this?
Well, I've heard a long time ago that Aurora already has actually a really draconian inspection process where landlords get like arrest warrants if they don't fix torn screens. I had some landlord tell me he got arrested for some old warrant on his apartment building in Aurora. And then I know Adams County also has a program like that. So question is, will Jeff go do something like this? And there's a lot of revenue associated with this. I mean, if you think about the application fees, I think the counties are going to take a hard look at it because it's that kind of economy.
A couple more. With an older building in new development areas of Denver, is there a point to sell the building to a developer instead of complying with the egress? That's a subject.
Well, the egress got voided for the time being on October 20th.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like that's a hard question because that's an individual question. I thought about selling my properties because early on in like March of this year, all my little duplexes did not meet the requirements, and I was really worried how this was going. The program has gotten a lot better, and they've deleted a lot of the commercial code that they were applying to small residential multifamilies. So I still think that what will happen is this program will make housing less affordable in Denver, and at some level give us landlords good appreciation because it increases the quality of not only the tenants who can afford the units that are inspected like that, but ultimately our returns and our appreciation long range. So to sell now and lose out on future appreciation, that's a decision that questioner has to make for themselves.
Yeah, it's gonna be property dependent. I mean, if you have an old property and it's a redevelopment play and you've got a buyer, that's an individual decision on whether you want to sell that property or not.
I feel like there are marginal neighborhoods where this inspection program, if enforced by the city, will increase the character of the neighborhood and possibly attract better tenants, which is good news, and it will lower the crime rate, and it's a gentrification play. Even though I think the people who define these rules are against that, it actually creates something that's counter to what the intentions were.
But just to be clear, as of now, there is no egress window requirement.
For pre-1990 properties, exactly correct.
No.
Okay, I think we got room for a couple more here. If the furnace is located above ground level, but not in a bedroom, does it need to be fire rated?
No.
Okay. What is your standard for evaluating lead-based paint? For example, an old wood window with new paint and no flaking versus a window with a few cracks and chips.
Unless there's flaking paint, in which case I'm actually required to like have it tested. Unless it's flaking, the lead-based paint testing is not required for this program.
So if there is flaking, you're saying that a lead-based paint would be required?
Yeah, in the guidebook, it has something about a minimum area of flaking paint. If it exceeds that, and they're just copying the EPA rules, I forget what the exact square footage was, but it's a non-trivial square footage. So if you have a little windowsill flaking, that's not enough to trigger that.
Okay, just two more. Tom asks, Arvada had an inspection program, but apparently abandoned it back in the 2000s. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't.
Okay. And finally, do you think that they will continue to improve the code to make things easier for landlords? That's interesting.
It's a fabulous question.
Yeah.
I wish I knew the answer.
Right.
It has gotten significantly better. So I believe what happened is there was a large volume of complaints, and it shows that there is a responsiveness that if we, as landlords, speak our mind and speak our truth about what this does to housing, the city does listen.
Awesome. Those are all the questions. So thank you everyone for throwing these out, because we as property owners ourselves have the exact same questions lingering in our minds. So it's all relevant for everyone. So, and thank you, Fleming, for going through all of those.
It's my pleasure. Yeah, thank you for having me here, and brilliant questions. It's great to hear those.
All right, so here's Fleming's contact information here. If you want to reach out to him to schedule an inspection, I'm sure he'd be happy to help you out. And if you need anything from Westpeak Properties, if you're looking to buy or sell or do anything like that, feel free to reach out to us as well.
Yeah, Brad and Jay helped me sell a 5-unit like a year and a half ago, something like that. And
Yeah.
we did a wonderful job, and we went under contract like 3 times, and it was a little stressful. We had some challenging buyers and challenging lenders, but Brad and Jay really helped manage that with all the showings, and the tenant management was really well done by you guys. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was an interesting deal for sure. It was a fun one because it had lots of different things to it that I hadn't done before, you know, with different buyers coming through to your tenants, and just an interesting building overall. So enjoyed the process.
All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we're going to call it, and everybody have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.